Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
John, I forgot to mention one thing about what we talked about. Hold on a minute. I have to clear my throat there. One thing we talked about last break when we talked about the MSNBC people, one of the panel members brought up in a situation where they were, and once again, these are journalists. I use quotes for that, air quotes. These are journalists who were in the courtroom, and one of the dudes talked about this, and one of the other women who was one of the reporters was in the courtroom as well, too, and they brought up the interesting aspect that I've heard nobody talk about. And you're a guy that puts his ear to the ground. I'm going to mention something, and you're going to laugh at first, but they talked about this, and this was a very, very, very serious topic they talked about. The woman talked about that when Stormy Daniels was on the witness stand, the first day she was on the witness stand, she was a little bit, you could tell she was uneasy. And the woman talked about how she was dressed somewhat interestingly, not very flamboyantly, had her hair up on her head, and was wearing essentially garments which were not form-fitting at all. Do you know why they were not form-fitting?
Because they would turn the jurors off, I'm guessing?
Because she was wearing bulletproof clothing. She had...
Wow, really?
She had body armor on. I'm going,
holy
what?
cow. Now, is that a little dramatic?
Well, okay. Now, here's what's interesting. There's two aspects of this. Okay, when you say that, in other words, if I say, hey, I'm going to my friend's house, and you know what? He doesn't live in the best neighborhood. Maybe I should wear my body armor. By saying that, what have I done, John? You're the corporate spokesperson guy. What have I just done?
First of all, I don't know. I don't know what you're getting at.
I've impugned his neighborhood that it's so rough.
Oh, yeah. It said that it's such a bad area that you're not safe.
Right. It's such a bad area that I have to have a gun. I have to have my body armor on. Okay. So by saying just the fact that she's wearing body armor, and I can hear the prosecution saying, well, yes, it was true that Stormy Daniels had on body armor because of the fact that we know the Trump organization has all these different, subcultures within it, and we know there's probably a group that within that those MAGA people that was probably going to try to assassinate Stormy Daniels to quiet her down. Okay, so once again, you say that, and that could be total conjecture, could be total BS, but yet what have you done to people? Oh my God, there was people going to try to kill Stormy Daniels, right? Haven't you?
Yeah, you're automatically getting sympathy for her, yeah.
Right. Okay, now the second thing is, once again, we're talking about, once again, how many, was it Friday morning when we had the President of the United States give his rebuttal to Donald Trump, and he essentially said, nobody is above the law, okay?
Yeah.
I'm reading an article from a law firm in New York City. It was published February 28th of 2023. And it starts off by saying, this is by Jill K. Sanders, Esquire. She is a female. I assume Jill is a female. She's a woman attorney. And the blog starts off, on May 14th, 2022, 10 people were murdered and 3 were injured by a shooter at Tops Supermarket in Buffalo, New York. You probably remember that shooting. During the shooting, the perpetrator was wearing a bulletproof vest. When an armed security guard shot him, the vest stopped the bullet from harming the shooter. In response to this awful event, New York legislators quickly passed laws banning the wearing of such body armor. So, Stormy Daniels is violating New York state law.
Both the spirit and the letter of the law.
By wearing body armor in the courtroom.
No one is above the law, even Stormy.
Right. So where is Alvin Bragg with his Oh, well, Stormy Daniels was wearing body armor. We're going to take her to court. We're going to charge her. And they talked about how and here's, it says, under the new laws, which became effective July 6, 2022, it is a crime in most cases to purchase, possess, sell, or exchange body vests or similar items. It is an felony offense if a person commits any violent offense while possessing a firearm, rifle, shotgun, blah, 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 blah. In defining body armor, the law refers to, quote, any product that is a personal protective body covering intended to protect against gunfire, regardless of whether such product is being worn alone or is sold as complement to another product or garment. So essentially, she was violating New York state law by wearing body armor in a courtroom.
Who's going to prosecute her?
Okay, now, nobody. Now, here we go again. Do you know what today is? You know what's happening in Delaware today? You know what the big deal is today?
I don't know, no.
Today is the start of the Hunter Biden gun trial. And over the weekend, one of his attorneys, here we go again. I mean, I hear this stuff and I just go, OMG. Over the weekend, one of the defense attorneys for Hunter Biden, and if you know the whole crazy story, he goes in and buys a gun. Anybody who's bought a gun, you have to fill out, 4173, I don't know what the form name is. You can't just walk into a gun store and say, I want that one. You have to sit down. Some of them gotten to the point where some of them have it on a computer, have it on a tablet, and you literally go through and you check all the boxes. And they ask you a series of questions. And one of the questions is, are you a marijuana user? And I can't remember if that's a separate question or two different questions. But it asks you if you are a drug addict. Okay, so in other words, can you get through your day without drugs? If the answer is no, then you're a drug addict and you can't get a gun. Now, his attorney, one of his defense attorneys, has come out and said that one of the employees at the gun shop doctored his application. Now, the interesting part of this is the angle they're pursuing is if Hunter would have answered that question, truthfully and said, yes, I'm a drug addict. When they do your application, they see that you answered yes to that question. They go, I'm sorry, but we can't give you a gun. So in other words, you're refused. If you answer any questions that you're supposed to answer no to, and instead you answer yes to, you don't get the gun. So they're essentially trying to make it out that the quote-unquote gun store was just out to make a sale, and one of the employees must have erased his answer and changed the answer.
Entirely plausible. That sounds just right to me, Brad. I take that at face value.
Oh, man. So the deal today is he goes on trial, and the crazy part of it is that, and once again, we have the president on Friday who says nobody is above the law. Okay, John, if you and I had made, $3, $4, $5 million and not reported that to the IRS, do you think that they might want to have a little talk with us?
Yeah, probably just a chat, but then they'd realize that it was just a bookkeeping error.
Right, just a bookkeeping error.
It happens. Everybody makes a mistake.
Right. Do you think that we had this, and by the way, I heard this interesting thing. A guy over the weekend, once again, I listened to all this stuff. I don't remember who was speaking, but they said, here's what the Republicans should do. They should find a sympathetic district attorney in a red state or red city, whatever, and go after the 51 people who signed the letter. Do you know what letter I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
When the Hunter Biden laptop surfaced, this was, and let's get the dates all correct here. This was before the election, so this would have been in late summer or early fall of 2020, okay? The Hunter Biden laptop surfaced, I think, a year or 2 years before that, and that got to be sort of a big thing. Remember, the New York Times said it was Russian disinformation, and the New York Post, which put comments about this, put a story on their Twitter account at the time. Twitter, not under Elon Musk, under the original owners, took the tweet down and banned the New York Post from Twitter because how dare they publish such false information. Essentially, this whole thing was, and 51 people, including the guy who was former head of the FBI, signed a letter which was printed in newspapers across the country saying this was disinformation and the Hunter laptop was actually done by the Russians, okay? So essentially this dude's saying, okay, We need a DA, a prosecuting attorney, someplace in the United States, to file suit against all 51 of these people that signed this letter, essentially saying they were trying to change the trajectory of the election because of the fact that they had essentially signed off on a letter saying, well, this Hunter Biden laptop thing is all baloney and it's all Russian disinformation. And yet I'm thinking to myself, yes, but the problem with that is it ain't going to happen. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, nobody's going to prompt and nobody's going to follow through with any kind of action. Now, maybe there's the opportunity, Brad, of where if you only have certain attention and you only have certain resources, maybe that's not the best use of the right wing, infrastructure. Maybe it's just focusing on winning this election. I mean, it seems like everybody's really pissed off right now, Brad.
Well, I mean,
and I hope on our side doesn't, I say our side, I'm assuming stuff here, but I just hope that our side, pro-Trump people, don't peak too early. Like, I hope we're not at our angriest at the first week of June and we forget about it by November.
Well, the purse string sure opened last week when, what was it, like $52 million flowed into Trump's campaign war chest?
Incredible.
Yes,
and they
36
were small
hours.
Donor contributions as well, as I understand.
Right, and even a couple of the big wigs, a couple of the big corporate giants came out and said, okay, can't stand on the sidelines anymore. I hate to see what's happening to Donald Trump. I shouldn't do this, but I'm putting money into his account.
Yes. And it's just, what's amazing, too, is it goes back to the fact that Trump is, and I heard somebody talk about this on the radio that I was listening to yesterday, Brad, the idea of wanting to have Trump out of commission so that he can't be in Ohio and Pennsylvania and all these other states. And just think how Republicans really have the intensity on their side. First week in June, it feels like Republicans have the intensity on their side.
Oh, yeah. And what you're saying is hopefully that doesn't peak too early because, well, hold it now. With early voting, aren't they voting? Didn't they start voting back in March in some?
They did, yeah. And that includes people who are temporarily incapacitated, people if your Auntie Clarice is going to be out of town. You can start voting in some cities whenever you want to, Brad.
Okay.
In fact, your vote's already been counted.
Missouri story. I listened to Mark Reardon on Friday, and I can't remember who the expert was. I need to take notes. I mean, it's terrible. When I listened to this guy and I heard this guy say, they were talking about the governor's race. Now, first off, they never mentioned Bill Eigel. And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, is you're the expert. Is Bill's chances slim and none?
I think most people would say that today in the polls he's in third place for sure.
Okay.
And depending on what kind of poll you look at, Brad, he's either closed the gap with Kehoe significantly, but I think even the Eigel team would say that he's in third place by any poll right now.
Okay, they were talking about the fact that this was Jay Ashcroft's race to lose, and essentially they were saying Jay is losing this. And they were talking about the fact that Jay doesn't have very much money. Hold on a minute. My voice is going again. Jay doesn't have the war chest. He's not doing hardly any media. And they talked about the fact that what I've said, I can't drive 170, 70, 270 without seeing on the electronic billboards, the Kehoe billboards. I see them all the time. And you've probably seen them as well, too, correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And by the way, the Reardon Roundtable that day had Jane Duker, Greg Keller, and Jeff Rainford.
Maybe it was Rainford who was talking about this.
It was probably Greg Keller, who's a Republican consultant.
Okay. He talked about the fact that essentially Jay Ashcroft, I know he's your guy, he sort of squandered his position because of the fact that he has the advantage of name recognition from his father, John Ashcroft, who you worked for at one point in time, correct?
I did, and it is funny when you say that Jay Ashcroft is my guy, but go ahead.
Well, but I think you've said before that's the guy that you think is going to be the next governor, right?
No, absolutely no. I think I've said from the beginning, and I said it on Scott Fawn's show last month, Mike Kehoe is the incumbent here. So I think from the beginning, I think conventional wisdom is that Jay Ashcroft is the front runner. I think Mike Kehoe is going to win the election. Well, and I've said that from the beginning.
But whoever this expert was it Greg Keller? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
it was?
Probably Greg Keller. Yeah, he's a friend of the show, Brad.
Okay. He essentially was saying that Jay has done – he came right out and said, not a very good campaign, has not been very strong – out in the area, making stump speeches, kissing babies, petting dogs, things that kind of stuff. But just was doing, what he was saying was a subpar, run for the governor. And they talked about the fact that we are essentially what, 2 months out? I mean,
yeah, 8 weeks. I think we're 8 weeks away.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's, and other folks have weighed in on this as well. Mike Kehoe has a ton of money, and if you're Jay Ashcroft, you're essentially whistling past the graveyard, just hoping that you can hold on long enough that when you start running TV and radio and all these other advertisements, that it's enough to maintain your lead. If you're Bill Eigel, you're just thinking about when you can spend your money most strategically at the last moment, in the right geographies to gain ground on Kehoe and on Ashcroft at the same time.
And once again, you, as a political expert, which John is, you always have to take in consideration that the August primary is always a crapshoot because you don't know who's going to show up. A lot of people do not vote in the primary, and in a lot of races, especially in the counties that are predominantly one way or the other. For example, in the city of St. Louis, whoever wins the primary, they're it. In St. Charles, the Democrat, yep. and in St. Charles County, if the Republican, whoever wins the Republican primary, if they're running for an office within the state, within the county of St. Charles County, they're it. Because once you get past the primary, the Democrats, in this respect, and it's the opposite in the city of St. Louis, the Republicans have little or no chance. You could win and in a lot of cases in the city of St. Louis, there's nobody on the ballot for Democrats, right? I mean, for Republicans.
You're exactly right. And let's get back to that Republican primary. We're going to continue to see a lot of spending from Kehoe. We're going to continue to see, and to be fair, all three candidates are out. Bill Eigel's on the road all the time. To give credit to Jay has been doing some media, and I'm sure Jay is out in some respects and in different communities making the rounds, but all three candidates are going to be out. And Brad, I just think it's going to come down to money, and that's why I think Kehoe has the advantage in this race.
Well, the other thing they brought up, which I thought was interesting, is that they made the comment that, and I find this almost hard to believe, that we've never had a governor from the St. Louis area. Is that true?
Or at least it's been not in our lifetime. We haven't had a governor.
Maybe that's what they're saying.
I guess if you want to consider Eric Greitens to be a St. Louisan, I guess you could consider him to be a St. Louisan. Yeah, but if you would, you would also need to consider him a Republican too, I guess.
Right. Where he, interesting because he originally was a Democrat and he wasn't necessarily a native-born son. Like, for example, both Jay Ashcroft and Mike Kehoe are born in the state of Missouri. Mike Kehoe grew up in North City. Now
he did, yeah.
How's that for having a governor who has a little bit of a background? Because there are too many white dudes who can say they grew up in North City and who are running for political office. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, by the way, Bill Eigel also has a lead in memes. Nobody does a good meme like the Bill Eigel campaign. He's got some bangers out there, Brad.
Okay. Also, John, last thing I'll mention. Over the weekend, if you go to westplex1071.com and you pull down the menu, you will find a new page called Political Advertising.
No way! Are you serious, Brad?
When you click on that page, you will have a little talk about the fact. I'll read you the very first paragraph. Westplex 107.
I'm there right now. I'm on Westplex 107.1. Is it on the main page?
Yeah. Well, no. Just click on the menu and go down to Political Advertising. Westplex 107.1 is designed to appeal to those elusive voters that everyone is looking for. Soccer moms, a.k.a. the suburban women. Westplex 107.1's format is music targeted at women 18 to 54. The format is called AC, Hot AC, Adult Contemporary, with music that's engaging, up-tempo, and not offensive. It's mom-approved and kid-safe. Westplex 107.1 is the first station in the country, blah, 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 blah. It gives you...
Incredible. I'm adding a link on johncombest.com right now. For folks who are listening, go to johncombest.com, and at the end of the political ones, before we get into state government, you are going to find that link up in 30 seconds.
And if you are someone running for an office, and once again, the reason I do this all the time is you hear the experts. Well, we need to get those soccer moms, those suburban housewives to vote for us. And yet, where do they spend their money on? KMOX and 97.1.
That's right.
Which has like maybe 10, 15% female audience, whereas our audience is probably 90% women. Once again, Westplex 107.1. Go check it out. Okay, John, it's been fun. All weekend I've been dreaming about this hour, and God, it's gone already.
Well, we will be back in 23 hours, Brad.
How sad is that?
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest. John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?